How's it going, guys? This is Sick Libra, and you read the title, so you know exactly what this is. So, before I start, let's go with what I'm smoking. I am smoking Cornell and Deal's Bayou Morning in my meerschaum. As Scotty P would say shortly after that, it's March Meerschaum Madness. So, as it's coming to a close, I came across the old cobbit of the shire. Quite an interesting fellow. He understands that he rambles, but he does. But it's interesting to listen to nonetheless. I mean, what good is pipe smoking for if not for rambling? So, this is probably one of the only VRs I've done so far where I might actually be able to stop it at the end of the VR and, not talk about something else. Because Cobbit of the Shire wants me to talk about, a few of the people that I sub and why I sub them and how I came across them. So I'm only going to talk about one in this. I have subbed a lot of people, Scotty P, March Meerschaum Madness, the Peachies, obviously Cobbit of the Shire. I like Gribley's Folly, Derek Tant's fun, Mutton Chop Piper, though I don't think he's put out anything new in a little while. But the one I want to talk about is Stogie Farts. Guy's been around for quite some time. When I picked up pipe smoking again about a year before I picked this guy up, so about 8 years ago, I was trying to figure out what I had done wrong the first time around that made me not really continue, you know what I mean? So, I started doing my homework, and somebody I kept circling back to was Stogie Farts in his instructional videos on pipe smoking. Now, as far as I can tell, his YouTube channel so much anymore isn't as much about pipe smoking as much as is, his drawing. And, I gotta tell you, he's getting pretty good. He does portraits. That's something that I've never gotten into. I can never get the proportions of the face right. However, I can basically photocopy any animal or inanimate object as long as I've got, a black and white of it. Anyways, everybody's got their own talents. But Cobbit of the Shire wants a story. I'm a seagoing man myself, which means any of you seagoing fellas out there have heard sea stories. So I'm going to tell a couple sea stories. And for those of you who are not in the know, you will always know a sea story is coming from an old sailor when you hear the words, "So there I was." Every one of them. It's like an unspoken requirement of telling a sea story. So there I was. It was my first year in the Coast Guard. I was on the bridge of an 87-foot cutter. I had been on this boat for about 8 months. I'd sailed through storms. I'd sailed through waves. And this 87-footer was in the North Pacific Ocean. It was based out of Northern California. And it withstood some pretty rough stuff on a regular basis. Any of you who've ever been sailing out in the North Pacific know that it is not a gentle girl. So we get out underway, just kind of patrolling. It's crab season, so we're dodging crab pots. We're looking for crab fishermen who are, not in the middle of running their pots. And we decide that, we got a little bit of weather brewing out of the north. It's kind of kicking up some waves, and they decide, head south. And we had a safe harbor that we would pull into down south and, anchor up for a night or two and, kind of launch the small boat and go and do some patrols on the small boats out there. So we decided this is what we're going to do, especially with the weather kicking up, and, because there was nothing going on in our home harbor. And so we spend the day with the sea stern to, heading south. It took us about 2.5 hours to get down to the inlet where we were. But by the time we got there, the seas had built to breakers in the mouth and the entryway of this inlet. And we watched them for a while. We watched the sets and thought about it and decided that it was safer to turn back and head back home where we don't have a breaking bar to go across to get back into our home port. So we turn around, and when the seas are stern to and you're going with them, it never feels like they're as big as they are. These ones were pretty sizable. We turn around and bow into 10-footers. It's like, oh God, this is going to be a long ride home. So I go down and I pop some extra seasickness medication, and I go up to stand my watch on the bridge. And time goes on. We're getting the living snot kicked out of us. We're bouncing all over the place. We've got water spraying up onto the pilot house, but these seas are building. And it's not cool. Because building on 10 foot makes really, really big waves. So we started coupling these massive rollers with a little bit of wind chop, which basically takes your waves, and instead of making them like this, it makes them like this. Not fun, especially when my pipe is the boat and the wave is going like this. Not fun one little bit. So over the course of the evening, this 10-foot sea builds to 25. We would come down the back of one wave, and we would have to bend down and look up out of the windows of the bridge to see the next one break over the top of the pilot house. We had to ship locked down as much as we could, watertight integrity, and we just got slammed for the next 6 hours trying to get home in this. Now, after my first patrol, I was never really prone to seasickness. Kind of get used to it after a while. You learn to read the signs, learn to control it. But prior to entering a port in the Coast Guard, you have to have a navigation brief where you discuss the plan of attack for entering restricted waters. So, I set this up. And I had managed to hold out for 6 hours without throwing up. And I'm standing there reading this navigation brief, and if you know anything about motion sickness, reading makes it worse. So I'm reading this brief, and I'm like, and the winds are going to be, hold on a second. I pick up a trash can, I yak in it, I set it out back right behind the pilot house door, continue the nav brief. We pull in. That was some of the nastiest water I've ever been in. It's probably one of the only times out on the water I've ever been like truly scared. Boat took it like a champ though, and apparently so did I, because I got a lot of pats on the back after that, after standing that watch, because it was not an easy one to stand. So that's one sea story. I've got lots, but I'll share a bonus. So there I was. Middle of the Central Pacific Ocean. Nothing but water as far as the eye could see. Nothing overhead. Hundreds and hundreds of miles away from land. Absolutely nothing to be found. And I'm standing my watch vigilantly upon the bridge. Now, this watch was quiet. This watch was unusually quiet. Eerily quiet. Nobody was talking. Not sure why, nobody was talking. And I had the OOD, the guy in charge, the Deccan, whatever you want to call him. He was this old, salty, crusty BMC. He was on his twilight tour, on his way out of the Coast Guard. And everybody's just staring out the window. There's seas aren't rocking very much. Like, it's nice and quiet. This is a big ship too. It was a national security cutter. You want to know what kind of ship I'm talking about? Look them up. Anyways, we're standing there on this watch. It's quiet, just quiet. And all of a sudden, at the top of the pilot house, we hear this loud thud. And without missing a beat, this chief looks up and says, "Secure from personnel aloft." It was probably about the funniest thing I'd ever heard. But I asked, was there somebody up there? And he said, "No, not that I know of." So we go out and we look, and we cannot figure out what hit the top of the boat. I mean, it was kind of a metallic clang. You knew it wasn't a person. We'll just go ahead and say that outright. But there was nothing overhead to have fallen on the top of the pilot house. A little spooky. And we even looked up there. There was nothing. There was nothing loose. There was nothing falling down. There was nothing. Still have absolutely no idea what made that sound today. But the nonchalant manner in which this guy just said, "Secure from personnel aloft," was absolutely hysterical. So, there's you a couple of stories. It's rare to get me off on get me off talking about the Coast Guard, but that's how I roll. Till next time, guys. You have a good one.